Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be talking about Restoration Druids. There's been some changes made in the last day or so towards Resto Druid talents, towards Resto Druid feral affinity changes, the way the bleeds work and things like that. And we're going to be talking about the changes. We're going to be talking about basically the overview of what Resto Druid is looking right now, and you'll be hearing my opinions about the changes. Of course, it's beta. It is kind of late in the beta, but there is still a lot of changes happening, so keep in mind anything can change. So first of all, one of the biggest changes to happen to Restoration Druids, and it's a change towards what most Resto Druids are most fearful about, is the tier 100 talent road, Photosynthesis, Germination, Flourish combo. Like, people are really, let's say, annoyed or scared about picking one over another and feeling left out and feeling unable to optimize for certain fights. Like, I mean, which talent is going to be the best for 5-mans, which talent is going to be the best for raids, and overall it's really hard to decide right now. But Photosynthesis, Blizzard has been looking at this. I hope they've been looking at this. You can see this, Photosynthesis has been changed. So Photosynthesis before used to increase rejuvenation, healing, make it faster by 30% when you place Life Bloom on yourself. Now it's going to make all of your HOTS 15% faster when you place Life Bloom on yourself. So instead of spamming rejuvenation when you have Life Bloom in AoE situations, you'll be spamming basically majority of your spells, because majority of your spells are going to give some kind of a hot portion to the party or to the raid. You have to look at things like, I mean, you have the Wild Growth hot, you have the Spring Blossoms hot, which you can pick Spring Blossoms and Photosynthesis if you wish. So you have Cultivation, you can also talent that as well. You have the Rejuvenation hot, you have the Regrowth hot, you have the Tranquility, not the healing portion, but the hot portion, which persists after Tranquility as well, which is also buffed by Photosynthesis when you place Life Bloom on yourself. On top of the fact that the Life Bloom itself is going to be buffed if you place it on yourself. So there is a lot of spells that are going to be affected by this, and I can see why Blizzard made this change. It makes sense. I mean, in the previous scenario, you were kind of forced to just spam Rejuve all of the time. If there's an AoE situation, you place Life Bloom on yourself and you just spam Rejuvenation. Now it's going to be much more interesting. There's much more options to what spells you're going to use, much more viability. Like, maybe someone needs more direct healing or whatever, more hot healing. Like, the fact is, maybe you placed Wild Growth right before there was AoE, and if you actually place Life Bloom on yourself, the Wild Growth hot is going to be increased, so you don't feel that left out. So overall, this seems like a positive change and an overall buff to the talent itself. Now, a lot of people have fears towards Photosynthesis itself, the usage of it. Like, I mean, you place Life Bloom on a tank when you need that single target healing. It's going to buff your single target healing on the tank, or at least it's going to proc Life Bloom based on your periodic heals. So it's good. You need single target healing, you place Life Bloom on the tank. You don't place it on yourself. So all of a sudden, when there's AoE damage coming, you'll be placing Life Bloom on yourself. So you swap straight away. Now, a lot of people's fear is that, what if there is, like, you know, it happens. When you do a dungeon, you'll notice that sometimes maybe everyone is taking damage except for yourself. The fact is that most likely you'll still want to place Life Bloom on yourself, even if there's no healing needed for you, but that's going to buff your AoE healing for others. So it kind of feels sometimes counterproductive, but for majority of the time, if there is AoE damage coming out in raids, in 5-mans, you as a Druid will also take some part of that damage, and placing Life Bloom on yourself is not going to be completely wasted, especially even if the Life Bloom is buffed as well by the very latest change here. So it's not that counterproductive if you really think about it, but there are moments where you are full HP and you're like, why am I placing Life Bloom on myself when everyone else, like, it feels a bit weird. But I feel overall, Photosynthesis is literally the only thing that is completely new about Restoration Druids, because everything else is just talent swaps, and basically the biggest change of all, 15-second Rejuve, which is going to change your playstyle quite a bit. You no longer can pre-hot, at least in raids, to the same extent. You'll probably have to focus on tanks and maybe priority targets who have like certain debuffs, so you won't be pre-hotting as much. So all of a sudden you talk about Flourish. Flourish is extremely, at least right now, it's looking like an extremely strong cooldown. Like I mentioned before, it has two cooldowns baked into it. And without it, you don't have that many cooldowns left as a Restoration Druid in 5-man end raid scenarios. Now, it's a cooldown that it's a 1.5 minutes, so it's not extremely long, and it's not extremely short to the same extent. But all of a sudden, there's been some talk, and there's been some people going with this Inner Peace build where you get Tranquility for 2 minutes, then you have Flourish on 1.5 minutes, and all of a sudden, you're looking at a Druid. Every 2 minutes, you'll be able to trank and extend the trank hot with Flourish. So for every 2 minutes, a Druid will have an insane amount of burst happening from those 2 cooldowns. And like I mentioned, this is something that people have tested out, and it's looking okay. Like, I mean, it's beta, anything can change, but it's one of the builds that are floating up around. Whether it's going to make it in the live, whether it's going to be viable, I'm not sure. But the 2-minute super burst window for Resto Druids is something that's happening right now, and when you don't have those cooldowns, you'll be just pre-hotting. You'll be pre-hotting the tanks, you'll be pre-hotting the priority targets. Like I mentioned before, 15-second rejuvenation, you can't really blanket the whole raid. So you won't be... It might feel like you're not doing that much outside of that 2-minute window, but that's just one of the builds that's emerging. I'm not saying it's going to be viable. I'm not saying it's just something that people are talking about. Now, whether Photosynthesis is better than Flourish, Flourish is still looking extremely strong. I have to see how the 5-man situations are going to work out. Like, I mean, Photosynthesis does provide that constant healing, so you can almost assume that on constant AoE fights, that Photosynthesis might be the way to go. But if you know there's incremental or there's damage every 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes, you know that Flourish is gonna have a big impact for that fight. It can make up a big portion of your total healing percentage. It can be a massive portion. So all of a sudden, you're placing all of your healing into these cooldowns, which might feel good or might not. We'll have to see in the future. So the other changes happen is to do with kitty weaving, is to do with kitty DPS as a resto. If you don't enjoy DPSing as a healer, it's perfectly fine. This portion of the video might not affect you that much. If you're the type of healer when there is nothing to heal, when there's downtime, the tank is not taking any damage, the party is perfectly fine, and you want to go in, like, you know, you want to go into kitty DPS, you want to throw in some of the bleeds and things like that, this change is going to make you extremely happy, because like I said before, kitty DPS or a DPS as a resto was relatively nerfed by the lack of legendaries, the lack of the Feral Ring, the lack of the legendary Boomkin Shoulders. So going into kitty DPS with like 100 energy instead of, like, you know, your Feral Ring that gave you additional energy, gave you more energy resources, all of a sudden you go into kitty DPS and there's really not that much time you can spend into kitty DPS. But right now you have to consider this. Bleeds are going to be affected by haste, which is a big change for people who want to actually optimize their DPS as resto, because in Legion, haste was a decent stat. I mean, it did increase the energy regeneration and things like that, but overall, crit and verse was the strongest way to go. So with BfA, with bleeds being affected by haste, this might change. We'll have to see at the exact stat values and things like that later down the future. But also a big change, that Killer Instinct. So Killer Instinct is a passive in your book, in a spell book, but either way, it's like grants 100% of your intellect as agility when you shapeshift. So that means when you go into kitty form, when you go into bear form, all of a sudden all of the intellect that you have is being transferred to your agility, and you can do proper damage. You don't feel completely useless. Now this has been removed to some extent. I'm pretty sure it's been added to your feral or to your kitty abilities as a baseline, because I haven't seen anything in terms of changes, but I've checked out the damage and the rest of damage seems to be the same. There's no nerf or anything like that. I feel that Blizzard is trying to remove a lot of the spellbook abilities that are passive, that are not supposed to be there, to the very same extent as a Holy Priest. Serendipity, the passive in your spellbook, has been removed, and that ability has been baked into your Holy World spells. So I feel that Blizzard is trying to do the exact same thing here, but by doing this, by removing Killer Instinct, you now as a Resto Druid, when there's nothing to heal, when the party is saved, the tank is doing perfectly fine, you have Feral Affinity spec'd into it, you go into your cat, you have that 100 energy, you apply a couple of bleeds, you apply Rip, you apply Rake, whatever, and then if you shift to your caster form, those bleeds will do the same amount of damage. Now in Legion, this was completely opposite. If you go into your feral form, if you go into your kitty form, you apply bleeds, and all of a sudden someone in your party needs instant healing, or someone's dipping low and you're not completely sure whether you should heal them, you have to make a decision. If I heal that person, I shift into my normal form and my bleeds will do very, very little amount of damage. All of a sudden my bleeds are not going to, because you have to stay in your kitty form. This has been removed. In BfA, you can go into kitty form, you can apply those bleeds, and you can feel safe about going and healing your range DPS, going and healing your tank, because those bleeds will still do the same amount of damage. So this is a big, big quality of life improvement that a lot of Resto Druids, a lot of Druids who spec into Feral Affinity and enjoyed Feral Affinity playstyle, they kind of missed out on this in Legion. And this has been added right now. So all of a sudden, like, I can see what Blizzard is trying to tell you. You have that 100 energy, this kind of playstyle of, you know, you apply your Moonfire, you apply your Sunfire, you heal the members, you have rejuvenations rolling on everyone, you have Life Bloom, whatever. And then you go into your kitty form, everyone's safe, you apply bleeds, you apply bleed. All of a sudden you have no energy left, someone's taking damage, you shift out, you heal them, and you do that over and over again. This kind of playstyle is already emerging when you spec into Feral Affinity. So overall, this is a really, really nice change in my eyes. Of course, not a lot of people like to DPS as a healer. I completely understand that. But for the people who do like to help out their party in terms of DPS as a healer, this is a very, very welcome change. And especially for the fact that those, you know, legendaries and gear swap are not available right now in BfA. So this is going to be a nice change. Overall, what I feel about Resto Druids, I'm still not 100% happy about tier 100 talent choices. I mean, tier 100 talent choices feel extremely, extremely strong when compared to other healers. I mean, compared to some other healers, the tier 100 is not really that game breaking when you choose certain talents. I like that Blizzard is looking at photosynthesis. I like that Blizzard is not ignoring the fact that tier 100 is missing something and that photosynthesis needs substantial buffs to make it viable for certain content. I feel this change to photosynthesis is the right one. It gives you better playstyle. You're not fully locked into rejuvenation spam. You can use other spells because Druids have a lot of hots, and all of those hots are going to be faster with photosynthesis. And this kitty DPS change is extremely, extremely nice for the people who do help out the party, who do enjoy that DPS as well. So overall, I feel it's really nice changes. I'm not exactly sure where Resto Druids are going to go in terms of gameplay, but the 15-second rejuvenation, you can already see you're going to have to focus, or you're going to be way more selective about which characters you're going to pre-hot and how you're going to spend your cooldowns if you do spec into Flourish, Inner Peace, or whatever combo. So thank you for watching this, guy. Let me know how you feel about this. Let me know if there is more builds that are being emerged or emerging for Restoration Druids that are completely viable in raids or in 5-mans. You have to remember, this is beta. Things are changed even though there's only a couple of weeks left. Thank you for watching this guide, and I'll see you in my next video.